We have this cultural obsession with the smoking gun.
Absolutely.
We watch all these legal dramas, listen to true crime, and we're sort of trained to look for that one piece of physical evidence that just changes everything.
The DNA match, the fingerprint on the glass.
Right. The timestamp on the security camera. We really like to think that when a decision is made in a courtroom, especially a huge one, a decision that determines someone's entire life, it's driven by those hard, cold, undeniable facts.
That is certainly the ideal we all cling to. We want the courtroom to be this laboratory of truth where everything is just binary, true or false, guilty or innocent.
Exactly. But what if I told you that in one of the most high-stakes legal environments you can imagine, the driving force wasn't a piece of physical evidence at all?
Okay.
What if the verdict didn't hinge on a fingerprint, but on a philosophical tool that dates back to ancient Greece? What happens when you build a prison cell out of sentence structures?
It sounds like an exaggeration, but that's exactly what we're going to unpack today. It's a fascinating and, frankly, a somewhat terrifying look at how language itself can be weaponized.
So today, we are doing a deep dive into a text called Syllogism and Logic in the Dahl regime, and we're specifically zooming in on Episode 1, Beyond Baneheia.
And we should probably set the table here.
Yeah.
The Baneheia case is massive. It's traumatic, a huge part of recent Norwegian history.
Right, and it's really important to clarify our mission here. We are not here to relitigate the entire case.
No, we're not playing detective on the crime itself.
We're not doing true crime today. We are doing true logic. We're taking a microscope to one specific moment of legal reasoning used by State Attorney Edward Dahl.
Specifically, how he used something called a syllogism regarding mobile phone evidence when the case was in the Court of Appeal.
And this is where it gets so interesting, because this isn't just about, legalese or jargon. It's really about critical thinking. It's about how an argument is built.
It is. You can build a house that looks perfect from the outside, but if the foundation is made of sand, it's all going to collapse. Today, we're inspecting the foundation.
I love that image. But I have to admit, when I first saw the word syllogism in the source material, I had this flashback to a philosophy elective I took in college that I mostly slept through.
You're not alone, don't worry.
I know it's logic. I know Aristotle is involved, but help me out. What exactly is a syllogism?
It sounds academic, I know, but it's actually very simple. At its core, a syllogism is just a structure for an argument. It's like an equation for truth.
Okay.
It's a way of arranging two statements, which we call premises, so that they lead inevitably to a conclusion.
So it's almost like math, but with words. A plus B equals C.
Precisely. And the source material breaks it down into three specific parts. First, you have the major premise. In the text, they call this the Hoved premise.
Okay, that's the broad universal rule.
The big picture statement, exactly. Then you have the minor premise, or the under premise. This is the specific case you're looking at.
So you're taking that big rule and applying it to a specific person or thing.
Yes. And then you have the conclusion, or conclusion. And here's the magic of the syllogism. If your major premise is true and your minor premise is true,
then the conclusion must be true.
it has to be. It's undeniable. It just locks you in.
Can you give me the classic example,
Sure.
the one everyone uses, just so we can kind of hear the rhythm of it?
Of course. The gold standard is Socrates. It goes like this. Major premise, all men are mortal.
Okay.
Minor premise, Socrates is a man.
Right.
Conclusion, therefore Socrates is mortal.
It's so clean. It's so satisfying. Click, click, boom. You can't argue with it.
Yeah.
Socrates is a man. Men die, so Socrates is going to die.
Exactly. It feels valid. But that word valid is a dangerous one, because in logic, an argument can be valid, meaning the structure is perfect, but the conclusion can still be false if your starting points are wrong.
Right. Like if I said all toasters are time machines, and this is a toaster, the logic is valid, but I'm not, traveling to the future.
Precisely. And that brings us to the lagmannsretten, the Norwegian Court of Appeal. Because we're not talking about toasters or Socrates here. We're talking about a murder trial.
And the architect of the argument we're about to analyze is State Attorney Edward Dahl.
That's right.
Okay, so let's set the scene. The issue on the table is the mobile evidence, or mobile bevis set. From what I gathered in the reading, the whole dispute was about whether a phone had coverage at a very specific place and time.
Correct. This was a pivotal point in the timeline. The prosecution really needed to establish where the accused was, and the mobile phone data was key. If there was coverage, it implied one scenario.
And if there wasn't, it implied a completely different one.
Exactly.
But here's the problem, and this is where, real life clashes with the clean lines of philosophy. The evidence wasn't clean, was it?
No, not at all. The technical experts couldn't give a binary yes or no answer. They looked at cell towers, topography, signal strength, and they essentially shrugged. They couldn't say yes or no with 100% certainty.
So it was a gray area, and the law absolutely hates gray areas.
The law is allergic to gray areas. The law needs a verdict. And this is where State Attorney Dahl steps in. The source text identifies him as constructing a syllogism to deal with this exact gray area.
I want to walk through this slowly, because when I first read this in our source material, I had to read it 3 times. It felt like a magic trick. I was looking for the sleight of hand.
Let's break it down step by step.
Okay, I have text right here. Let's start with Dahl's major premise, the foundation of his whole argument. It says, it was concluded that it is not possible to say for certain whether there was mobile coverage or not.
Okay, stop right there. Let's just analyze that. What is the state attorney admitting to?
He's admitting they don't know. It's an admission of ignorance. It is not possible to say for certain.
Exactly. The starting point of this entire logical structure is uncertainty. It is a void. It is we do not know.
Okay, so we're standing on a foundation of we don't know. Now, here comes the minor premise. Therefore, it is not possible to rule out that there wasn't coverage.
Now, just watch the language shift there. We're entering the world of the double negative. Not possible to rule out that there wasn't.
It feels slippery. It's basically saying, because we don't know for sure, anything is theoretically possible.
Right, and logically that part is true. If I don't know what's in a sealed box, I can't rule out that there's a cat inside. But I also can't rule out that there's a brick inside.
Or a sandwich.
Or a sandwich, exactly. Staying in the realm of not ruling out keeps you in the world of possibility, not fact. But listen to the conclusion Dahl draws from this. This is the leap.
Okay, here is the conclusion. Consequently, there is nothing in the way of assuming that there was coverage.
And there it is.
Wait, hold on. Let me just run that back. Premise 1, we don't know for sure.
Right.
Premise 2, since we don't know, it's possible. Conclusion, therefore, we're going to assume it's true.
That is the analysis that the source provides. The text highlights this incredible shift from uncertainty to a basis for assumption. The specific phrase used is nothing in the way of laying to ground that there was coverage.
Laying to ground. That sounds very official, very solid.
It is. In Norwegian legal terms, to lay to ground or leg til grunn, it means to establish something as a fact for the court to base its judgment on. It means the court is accepting it as reality.
But that completely defies the logic we just talked about.
Yeah.
In the Socrates example, the conclusion is inevitable because the facts are solid. Here, the conclusion is, well, it's a choice. He's choosing one option out of the box.
It's a choice masquerading as a logical result. The syllogism gives it the appearance of inevitability. It sounds authoritative. Premise A, premise B, therefore conclusion C. It has the rhythm of truth.
Yeah.
But the substance is actually an inversion of the burden of proof.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I mean, isn't the whole point of the justice system innocent until proven guilty? If you have to assume evidence exists because you can't prove it doesn't, isn't that the opposite of beyond a reasonable doubt?
That is exactly the friction that the source is pointing out here. In formal logic, this is often called an argument from ignorance. It's a fallacy where you claim something is true simply because it hasn't been proven false.
It's like saying, you can't prove I didn't fly to the moon last night, therefore there's nothing in the way of assuming I'm an astronaut.
Which would be fine if we were just telling stories at a bar. But if I am prosecuting you based on your astronaut status, that becomes a problem.
A huge problem.
And the source material makes a really interesting literary comparison here to highlight just how absurd this kind of logic can be. They bring up Erasmus Montanus.
Yes. I had to look this up, but this is Ludwig Holberg, right? The playwright?
Correct. An 18th century satire.
So for listeners who aren't maybe up on their Danish-Norwegian literature, Erasmus Montanus is this student who goes off to university, learns Latin and logic, and then comes back to his rural hometown just completely full of himself.
He's the classic intellectual snob. He thinks he's better than everyone because he knows how to construct a syllogism.
And he uses them to prove the most ridiculous things. The famous one is about his mom, isn't it?
It is. He wants to prove his mother is a stone,
Okay.
he says. Major premise, a stone cannot fly. Minor premise, mother cannot fly.
Conclusion. Therefore, mother is a stone. I mean, It's funny, it's a joke.
It's hilarious because it exposes the flaw in the structure. Just because two things share one quality, in this case, not flying, doesn't mean they are the same thing. It shows how logic, when it's divorced from reality and common sense, just becomes nonsense.
But the source material stops laughing pretty quickly. It makes a very, very dark distinction.
It does. It says, and I'm quoting here, "This was not a comedy, and Dahl is not Erasmus Montanus."
That line really stuck with me. Because in the play, the stakes are so low. The worst thing that happens is his mom gets confused and the village thinks he's an idiot.
Mm-hmm.
But in the Dahl regime, as the text calls it, we are not on a stage.
No, we're in a courtroom.
And that's the gravity of it. We're seeing the same rhetorical device, the same trick of language that's used by a comic fool being wielded by a state attorney to secure a conviction.
The source is suggesting that there's a fundamental clash between the rigid, abstract world of the syllogism and the messy, high-stakes reality of human lives.
So why do you think it works? Why did the court accept this? Because presumably the judges are smart people. They aren't uneducated villagers from an 18th century play. Why didn't someone just stand up and say, "Objection, Your Honor, logic doesn't follow"?
That is the million-dollar question. And I think it comes back to that desire for certainty we talked about at the very beginning. Uncertainty is uncomfortable. It's painful.
Especially in a case like this.
Especially in a gruesome case like Baneheia. Everyone, the public, the press, the court, they want a resolution. They want the story to make sense.
And a maybe doesn't make sense. You can't write a verdict based on a maybe.
Exactly. When you have a gap in the evidence that we don't know, it's a void. Dahl's syllogism built a bridge over that void.
A rhetorical bridge.
Even if that bridge was made of thin air, it allowed them to walk across to a verdict.
It provided a permission structure.
Permission structure is the perfect term for it. The phrase, "nothing in the way of assuming," sounds so bureaucratic, so permissive. It invites the judge to take that step. It shifts the burden from "prove it exists" to, well, nothing is stopping us from saying it exists.
And that connects back to the title of the source text, the Dahl regime. That word regime feels very specific. It doesn't sound like they're just talking about a one-off mistake.
No, regime implies a system, a methodology. The source seems to be arguing this wasn't just a slip of the tongue on a Tuesday afternoon.
Right.
It suggests this was a systematic way of operating, a style of prosecution where rhetoric was used to compensate for weak evidence.
It's weaponized linguistics.
Yeah.
It's using the rules of language to bypass the rules of evidence.
And that is a terrifying prospect, because if you can logic your way into a fact without any evidence, then what's the point of evidence?
This feels like a lesson that applies way beyond just the courtroom. I mean, I'm listening to this and I'm thinking about how many times I've been sold a syllogism in a boardroom.
Oh, absolutely.
Or in a political debate, or even in my own head when I'm trying to justify a bad decision.
You see this pattern everywhere. It's the argument from ignorance, disguised as wisdom. We have no data saying this strategy will fail, therefore we can assume it will succeed.
Or we can't rule out that our competitor is launching a new product, so we have to spend millions countering it.
It's the logic of fear, or the logic of ambition. It's using the unknown to justify an action you already wanted to take. The syllogism just gives it a veneer of rationality.
So how do we defend ourselves against this? If I'm sitting in a meeting or on a jury or just watching the news and I hear someone pull an Erasmus Montanus, how do I spot it?
You have to look at the premises. Ignore the fancy therefores and consequentlies. Look at the raw input.
Go back to the major premise.
Exactly. Ask yourself, is the starting point a fact or is it a question mark? If an argument starts with "we don't know" and ends with "we know," you're being scammed.
You cannot derive certainty from uncertainty. That seems like the golden rule here.
You can't. Not logically. You can only derive probability. And in a criminal court or even in high-stakes business decisions, probability should not be dressed up as certainty. We need to be able to tell the difference.
That distinction between validity and truth is something I'm really going to carry with me. It's startling how easily we could be tricked by a sentence that just sounds right.
It is. We are pattern-seeking animals. We love A plus B equals C. It feels safe. But sometimes A plus B equals a mess. And we have to be okay with that mess instead of inventing a clean answer that isn't really there.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave everyone with a thought to chew on. We've been talking about legal burdens innocent until proven guilty. It's, the bedrock of our society.
It is. It's the standard we hold everything else to.
But if a legal system allows a prosecutor to say, since we can't rule it out, we will assume it's true, does the burden of proof even exist anymore? Or has it quietly shifted onto the accused to prove a negative?
If maybe equals guilty, then we are all potential victims of a bad syllogism.
That is a heavy thought to end on, but a really important one. That's it for this deep dive into the logic of the Dahl regime. Thank you for helping us decode the matrix today.
My pleasure. Keep questioning the premises.
Always. Thanks for listening.